Hey guys, my name is Ismaus, and today let's look at how to use collection instances in Blender. So a collection instance is exactly that. It's an instance of a collection. Like you'd have as an object or any object in Blender and make an instance of that, which is basically a linked object or a linked object. So using Alt D, this is an instance of this because if I change any of these, the other will be changed. So in the same sense, we can create collection instances. So if I say, for example, I have, let's use this here, a circle, and I just give it some extrusion. Just go to edit mode, make a few changes, and maybe add a cylinder like this. Let me turn on random colors just so we can see everything much better. So if we have two objects like this and then give them a new collection, I'll just call it C, we can make a collection instance by just going to Shift A and then scroll down until you find a collection instance, and then you can add any instance of any of the collections you select. So for example, if I select this, you can see we have created a new instance of this collection, and if I change this collection, you can see those changes are reflected in this new collection we have. So another great thing about this is that the instance we have created doesn't add to the computation of the scene, because it's just reusing the data that we have in the original collection. So, and I can make multiple collections without ever affecting or increasing the computation power for my scene, because I'm just reusing the same data over and again. And even when you change the material here for any of the objects in your instance, that will be reflected in the instance collection. The instance itself is represented as an empty, but is rendered as the collection. So any changes, anything you can do to an empty, you can do to the instance collection. For example, I can scale, rotate, do everything else, but they don't have modifiers. And you can tell by just comparing it to a regular empty object, and you should see that the properties don't change whatsoever. So you can see if I select a mesh or a different type of object, you can see that the properties change, but if I select between these, the properties don't change, because we're using the same, the collection instance is treated as an empty object as well. So another thing to note about collection instances is that the pivot point of a collection, let me just get this again, add this again. The pivot point, or the center of the collection, is determined by the position of the objects from the center of the world. So if I move these objects away from the center of the world, you can see that the pivot point is not going to be moved. It's always going to be, it's just calculated from here. So just keep that in mind. So if you want the pivot point to be centered, you also need to make sure that all your objects in the instance are in the center of the origin. Another thing to note about instances is that collection instances can also be instances themselves. So you can see that I have this collection instance, but if I duplicate it, maybe rotate this like this, let's create an arc or an arch here. So if I duplicate this around, maybe create something like a chain link here. I don't know what this could be, but let's assume it's something. It is something interesting. Okay, let's actually do something interesting, because I think if we make these connect, like, yeah, so you can see we have instances here. If we make them, if we give them a new collection, so I'll call this X, and now I can also create it as a collection X instance. Okay, you can see we have collection X, but remember the position of the pivot point is going to be calculated from the origin here. So if I want the pivot point to be around here, I have to make sure that this is also there, so that I can have that. And again, this collection instance can be turned into another collection instance. So maybe we have something like that. So you can create some interesting things here. And these two can be turned into a new collection. So I'll call this Y. Maybe move it to the center as well so that we have the pivot point. Now I can even deactivate this so that they are not visible, even this in, and then just bring back my Y instance, and I can just, and remember, the duplicates are not adding to the computation. So I think they don't add to the geometry computation, but things like ambient occlusion may be added to the computation, because ambient occlusion for these objects, they don't add to the geometry computation of your scene, but they add to things like the effects that you see here. So let me just bring this up, because you can see that these are added to the scene, to each object. So let's say again this can be created to, this can be made to be another collection, maybe you. Again, need to make sure that so let's get that UU, and you can see, yeah, the viewport is still free. And if you want to see any some practical use of this, I used it heavily in this project here, where I was creating this stage here. Most of the only objects that are not instances, that are not collection instances, are just this cloth simulation here, and everything else is a collection instance. For example, these screens are all collection instances. I can see the empty there, and this is a collection instance of this green collection. And if I can isolate this for a second, you can see the screen itself. And so if I move any of the objects in the screen collection, you can see that the screen is affected. And in the same sense, these stands here are collection instances. Just get that. You can see this leg here is a collection instance, and it's also another collection instance of this leg collection. The original collection instance, the original collection is this leg collection. So this here. So if I move it around, you can see that everything is also moving around, because they're part of that collection. Yeah. So that's it. Thank you for watching.